Okay, this video will be on distance formula and then the midpoint formula. So right here we have the distance formula. We have d is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, so let's apply this to an example. Okay, so here, example 2, we have 2 points. So the first thing we want to do is we want to label these 2 points. So A, right here, is my first point, so I'm going to label this as x1 and y1. B is my second point, so I'm going to label it x2, y2. Now I just got to take the points that I labeled, plug them back into my formula, and see what we get. So here, I'll have d is equal to the square root of x2, which is 3, minus an x1, which is a negative 4. Okay, be careful with those negatives, squared, plus y2, which is a negative 1, minus y1, which is 1 squared. Okay. Let's simplify here. So here I get a 7, so I get a 7 squared, plus I get a negative 2 squared. Okay, keep on simplifying. I get a 49 plus a 4, which gives me the square root of 53. And there's my distance. Okay, so that's the distance formula. The next one is the midpoint formula. Okay, and the biggest difference with this one is that this is an actual point. It's not a distance. We're trying to find a point on the graph here. Okay, so we're going to start this the same exact way that we started our distance formula. Okay, we're going to start labeling our points. So here we have find the midpoint of GH, given G is 7, negative 5, and H is 9, negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to label these points. So I have x1, y1, x2, y2 here. Okay, and then I'm going to plug those in. So I have the midpoint is equal to, well, x1 is 7, x2 is 9 over 2, and then comma, because this is a point, right? This is an ordered pair here. Then we have y1, which is negative 5, plus y2, which is negative 1, divided by 2. Now I just got to do some simplifying. So I get 7 plus a 9 gives me 16 over 2. A negative 5 plus a negative 1 gives me a negative 6 over 2. This gives me 8, negative 3. Is my point there. Okay, so there's the midpoint formula. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is, well, what if we're given the midpoint and we got to find the missing endpoint? So let's look at example 6 here. So find the coordinates of A. Okay, so this is what we're trying to find is A. If M, we have this point M, is negative 1, 2, which is a midpoint, so let's highlight that. It's a midpoint of AB, and B has coordinates of 3, negative 5. So what I always like to do is I like to draw a picture. So I'm going to draw a picture here of a line segment, AB. Okay. So we have A here, B here. Well, we know B has the coordinates of 3, negative 5. And we know we have this midpoint, M, right here, as negative 1, 2 is M. Right there. Okay. Well, we want to find the coordinates of A, and we don't know. Okay. Well, we're actually going to use our midpoint formula. Here, I'll write it off to the side here, so we can reference it. 1 plus x2 over 2, and then y1 plus y2 over 2. Okay, so we can come back to it. Okay, well, we want to find the coordinates of A. Well, we start each of these problems the same way. We're going to label our points. Well, our first point here is x1, y1. Well, we don't know those yet. That's what we're trying to find. Our second point is x2, y2. So now we got to use the midpoint formula, plug in the things that we know to try to solve for x1 and y1. Well, one thing I like to show here is that this -1, well, where does that come from in the midpoint formula? Well, it comes from this guy right here. That's our x-coordinate in our midpoint. And then same thing for this y-coordinate. This 2 comes from this guy here, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay, so we just got to set up the equation of having these two and our midpoint formula be equal to our midpoint that we are given. Okay, so let's try it. So let's start with our x value. We're going to start with this guy right here. So x1 we don't know. x2 we do know, which is 3 right here. Over 2. Well, what is this going to be equal to? Well, it's going to be equal to our x-coordinate. Is equal to -1. Now all we have to do is just solve this equation for x1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. I get x1 plus 3 is equal to -2. I'm going to subtract 3, subtract 3. I get x1 is equal to a -5. Awesome. There's our first coordinate right there, -5. Okay. Now we just got to follow the same exact process for our y. Okay. So I'm going to do it over here. So we're going to have y1, which we don't know, plus y2, we do know, 5, over 2 is equal to our y-coordinate, which is 2. Okay, solve the same way. I'm going to multiply each side by 2. I get y1 plus a -5 is equal to a 4. I'm going to add 5, add 5. I get y1 is equal to 9. Okay, so there's my y-coordinate, there's my x-coordinate. So we can write it as an ordered pair, like that. So there is my missing endpoint.